So welcome everyone to the Pearson Business Book Club. My name is Eloise Cook and I'm the publisher of the Professional Business List at Pearson. If you've not joined before, we choose a Pearson business or personal development book each month at the book club and we invite the author to discuss it. And they'll also give a masterclass on a key concept from the book. If you need to leave halfway through, the video will be available to watch on demand at the book club website. I will pop in the chat. And here's more about the book. So our book this month is The Human Edge by Greg Orme, which won Business Book of the Year in 2020. If you haven't got a copy yet, you can buy it through the book club webpage. And we'll also be encouraging you to contribute during the session. I know Greg's got some questions for you, and we'll also have a Q&A at the end. So pop your questions in there. And just to introduce Greg, as well as being an author, Greg is a keynote speaker, organisational change veteran, and a leadership coach. He was the founding CEO of London Business School's Centre for Creative Business, and he's worked on organisational change in some of the world's best known organisations. And Greg tells me he loves Labradors, sailing and food. That's quite a good.
And the emphasis is on the veteran there in that description, I'm afraid to say.
Welcome, Greg. How are you?
I'm very well. Really, I've been really looking forward to this session. And so, yeah, can't wait to share. And it's really great. So many people have signed up. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, I've been sort of itching to get onto this subject for a bit now. I know we discussed it a few months ago, but it just feels more and more prevalent all the time. So it's probably good timing any time to be talking about ChatGPT and AI.
Yeah, well, you cannot go online or open a newspaper or go on the news without there's a headline about it almost every day. So it is particularly in the news at the moment.
It is. Right, well, we'll start with our usual questions for you. So we ask these of every author. So can you tell us, why did you want to write this book?
Well, I mean, it sounds like a very technical book, and it is a book about artificial intelligence and the digitization of work and the whole world. But I'm not a technologist, as your introduction indicated. I'm someone who helps leaders and organizations to perform, to deliver. But about sort of 8 to 10 years ago, I started getting very interested in AI, particularly because it just occurred to me it was going to be a part of all of our lives and very, very important. And if you think about machines taking us out of the working process, I mean, this goes a long way back. In the late 1700s, early 1800s, steam took our arms and legs out of the production process. And then about 50, 60 years later, electricity furthered that process. Well, this is really machines taking our brains out of some of the production process. So it's just absolutely central to who we are now and who we're going to be. So I started getting interested in it. And then the particular question, which is what the book is about, came from a question to me when I was delivering a speech about this at London Business School. And a woman came up to me afterwards and said, well, Greg, I'm interested in the whole organizational impact, but what about me? And what about my daughters? What skills do I need and my daughters need to stay relevant? And I didn't particularly have a great answer to that, but that launched me into the research and eventually publishing the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, I remember those enthusiastic conversations we were having right at the beginning.
Yeah, me too.
So next question, what surprised you about writing this book?
I think I was surprised about how, at the time, how hopeful I felt about human value next to machine value. And that is the central idea of the book, which is not to feel disempowered, but what can you actually do in a world of machines? I think what's continued to surprise me, I was delighted and surprised when it won the Business Book of the Year in 2020, which took it to a different level. But how relevant it's continued to be. And I think one of the reasons why this is a great time to have this, since November of last year, when ChatGPT 3 was launched, as it was then, that has just taken the world by storm, and billions of people around the planet, I don't think I'm exaggerating to say billions, have started to think about this because of the ChatGPT idea. So yes, it's had longevity, and I hope it'll stay relevant for quite a few years to come.
Absolutely, yes. And last question, how do you want readers to feel about reading your book?
I think I'd like people to feel like they've got things to do. That's my personality. I like to, whatever I'm looking at, I like to have things I can experiment with. So the book is full of experiments, practical experiments you can do to boost what I call in the book your superpowers that are uniquely human. So I would like people to feel empowered, inspired, and I guess forewarned about, I don't think it's going to be the easiest time to be a human in the workplace, but just like any threat or challenge, there is a lot of opportunities there as well. So I hope it helps people with that.
Absolutely, yes. I think that's a fantastic aim to have, and we'll see by the end of this session.
I'll try.
Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to your masterclass, demystifying the superpowers of ChatGPT. I think we've got some. Are we going to start with a poll?
We are, but first of all, I'll tell you what, I'll get my, let me just get my slides up, because the poll doesn't come immediately, but it comes quite soon after that. So I'm hoping you're now seeing my my slides. Is that right?
Yes.
Great stuff. So I'll just carry on, shall I? So there are some polls in between. I've got the chat going over here. I'm looking at two screens, by the way. So if I look over here, I'm not checking my emails. I'm just checking your chat. So please keep those questions coming. Eloise is going to help me with that. And we've got some polls for you as well. We'll hopefully have some time at the end for the questions, but I'd love to see your questions coming through. What I'm going to try and do in this is offer you, just as I've just been saying to Eloise, some ideas about what this is, ChatGPT in this instance, but AI more broadly, how it is impacting our lives now, how it might do, and what you can do about it. So let's get going, shall we? When I turn on the television or go online, this is what I see, like you, every day. ChatGPT 4 is just part of a fast-changing world. It can feel quite, it makes you feel dizzy how quickly things are changing. And what, as I was saying, ChatGPT 4 and AI more generally is helping to make these changes happen in the world, and also helping to accelerate some of them and also provide solutions for them. So it's kind of across the map. And as I say, I'd like to give you some idea of where we are in that. So let me start with a question, because I don't quite know exactly who's on here. It'd be lovely to know from a poll. How worried are you about the rapid development and use of artificial intelligence? And hopefully Sarah can launch that. Yes, I see it being launched. And you've got 5 options there, from very worried to 100% unworried. And I'd love to know where you are with that. Great. It's fascinating to see these things develop, and I'm sure Sarah will publish that in a moment, because I think we're getting to the point where pretty much everyone has voted now. Please vote in the next couple of seconds if you haven't. Don't feel shy. We're not going to point at your particular answer. It is confidential. Okay. So I think that's now been published. The poll has ended. Yes. So it's interesting. And I'm not surprised. There's very relatively few, 15% unworried, almost no one are totally unworried. And I think, yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm generally a pretty optimistic person. I think any powerful technology, there's great light and there's great shade. And that's what we're seeing. And so we've got, if you all add them up, 44 plus 9, it's sort of 58%. So nearly 60%, have got some concern. So if you're in that group, maybe you could use the chat box now. What are the nature of your worries? Just with a word or a couple of words, just let me know, what is it you're concerned about? Because obviously this is in the news all the time. I'm checking out the chat here, and let's just please pop something in there. what are the nature of your worries? I'd love to know what you're thinking about, your concerns about this technology. Are you seeing anything in there yet, Eloise?
Oh no, yeah, we've got some stuff coming through saying chat is disabled. So if people want to just use the Q&A function, we'll see your comments there, and we can read them out.
Okay, so chat is disabled, got it. And now I've got the Q&A function up there as well. See, so here we go. We've got a few: reduce autonomy and displacement. My chat is disabled. I don't think that's a concern about AI.
Yeah.
Lack of regulation, job security. And I think job security, by the way, is predominantly what we'll be looking at. I'm concerned about academic integrity. I think integrity about all sorts of things, essays, truth. I mean, it really poses some philosophical ideas. And we've got someone going swinging for the fences there with existential threat, which of course we read a lot about. So let's get into a few of those, shall we? Now, does anybody remember, and please do use the Q&A buttons, I'll keep this. Does anyone remember who this guy was? It was 2016, so I'm going a little way back. This is 7 years ago. You get extra points if you remember his name. So this is Lee Sedol, and at the time he was the world champion of the 3,000-year-old game of Go, which is an Oriental game. And it was one of the last bastions of humans taking on AI at games, because if you remember, it was 96 or 97 where Garry Kasparov lost to chess. This was 20 years later. And he's looking at the board there. This is the moment I think he realized he'd lost. And I think it was a big moment. And I think Lee Sedol, who's a very smart guy, and all of us have a problem with AI because we struggle to understand how quickly it develops. We struggle with a thing called exponential growth. Exponential growth is everywhere around us. The human brain isn't particularly well tuned to it. And this is one called Moore's Law, which you might have heard of. It comes from a guy called Gordon Moore, who was a co-founder of Intel in the late 60s. He came up with the idea that the transistors, which became microchips, which create computing and AI, they halve in size and increase and double in power about every 18 months. And also the price gets halved as well. So this is an exponential growth, but it's very difficult for us to understand it. So if you will, let's have a little thought experiment. So if you went on to the M40 motorway near me here in Stratford-upon-Avon, and you arrived at 5 miles an hour down the slip road, everybody would be very angry with you. But if you then said, okay, I'm going to speed up, and I'm going to speed up by double every minute, it would take you 5 minutes to reach 80 miles per hour. So that's the start of an exponential curve. So here's a bit of a quiz for you. What happens if you then subsequently double your speed from 80 for the next 27 minutes? You double it every 27 minutes. Anybody want to have a go at that? It would be great to know what you think. It's very, very tricky. So I don't expect one of the reasons, the point I'm making is the answer, which by the way is this: you'd be going 671 million miles an hour, is very difficult for us to understand as human beings. In the final minute, by the way, you travel 11 million miles around the earth, 275 times. That's how quickly computers have been improving every 18 months or a year since the late 60s. And so when I joined the computing revolution, this was one of the first games I actually played Pong first. You might remember that game, but this was one of the latter games I played when I was in about 10 or 11. This is Atari Breakout. And the computer that beat Lee Sedol at the game of Go in 2016 warmed up on the Atari games of my youth. And this is one called Atari Breakout. And this again gives you a sense of exponential growth. So this is the game. This was AlphaGo, the AI that beat Lee Sedol after 10 minutes of playing Atari Breakout. Now, bear in mind, it wasn't given the rules. It was only told, please maximize the score. So it's teaching itself. This is the machine learning we hear about. It's teaching itself through trial and error. And as you can see, it's not that great after 10 minutes of playing the game. It's pretty average. It's got one score there. But this is interesting. After 2 hours of playing the game, this is what it looks like. And it's reached here by just very rapid trial and error. as you can see, it's not a bad player. It's about, maybe that's about how I was when I was maybe not quite that good when I was 11 or 12 when I used to play this. Now, this is fascinating. This is only 2 hours later after that. This is 4 hours of playing the game. And not only has AlphaGo figured out how to play this game very well, it's got a strategy. Those of you who played this in your youth know if you can get that ball behind that wall, well, it plays itself. And AlphaGo became very, very good at this. And that is the story. I mean, in many ways, the video games are the story, just the same as AI, of vastly increased, exponentially more powerful computers, vast lakes of data, and this thing called machine learning. And this, by the way, is a computer game launched in 2023. That is a computer game. That is not real life. That's how much they've changed in 30 or 40 years, thanks to exponential growth. And that is what we're seeing in the world of ChatGPT-4. So forgive me if you're an expert in this, because I'm going to get really basic now. What is ChatGPT? It is what's called a large language model. It is scraping many words and sentences off the web, from everything from LinkedIn to Wikipedia to academic papers to all sorts of things. And this, by the way, is my account. You can get a free account, go and try it for yourself. And all you do is put a little question there in the box at the bottom, and it speaks to you in text, effectively comes back in text. And that's what's created this big hubbub, believe it or not. Looks pretty simple, doesn't it, actually? That's what it is. It is a large language model, and it is using that to talk to us. How does it work? Now, this is the really interesting bit. You know that function, that annoying function when you're using your mobile phone and you're trying to send a text and it guesses the next word? It kind of does that on steroids. So when we say a large language model, we really mean large. This thing has ingested 300 billion words. And what it does, a bit like predictive text, but a lot better, it predicts not just the next word like it does on your iPhone, it predicts the next sentence and the next paragraph that it thinks would respond to your prompt, your question. And that's why it comes across as being so human-like. There's another reason why this is better than Google. Or it's different from Google, I should say. When you search Google, of course, you get useful websites which are being offered to you by artificial intelligence. ChatGPT gives you text, and then importantly, you can follow up with a question, and it remembers its previous answer, and you can ask it to refine that question, give it you in less words or more words or in a particular style. So it's very like speaking to a human being, and that's what it does. So what is it good at? Well, I use it for pretty much the heavy lifting, the start of any writing process or any thinking process. It will just give me some ideas. And one of the reasons why you've been reading about it in the press is it does some amazing things and has achieved great things since November of last year. It passed the US bar exam to become a junior lawyer in the States. It could do that. It was that good at it. It picked pretty good stock portfolios in the style of Warren Buffett by looking at what it had learned. And I think one of the breakthroughs for it was Google, which is, of course, an arch rival. OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, is actually funded partially by Microsoft. Google, which has its own AI called Bard, said actually after it had tested it, it probably would have hired ChatGPT to be a junior coder, because it doesn't just produce text, it produces, slightly ironically, computer text too. So that's what it is. That's what the big fuss is about. Now, here's one of the points I want to make. How can you use it? And again, I'd like to ask you a question. So I'll get rid of that first poll. How often do you use ChatGPT-4? Never? Have you tried it once? That's option 2. Rarely, once a week, or every day? I'd love to know where you guys are. Oh, that's really interesting. I've never asked this question before, so this is a first. Quite evenly spread, actually. So keep voting. We haven't quite got everybody yet. Don't be shy. If it's never, it really doesn't matter. If it's every day, it doesn't matter either. Okay, I think that'll do it. So maybe Sarah, you can yeah, Great. So the poll there, as you can see, so it's about 30% are using it once a week or every day, and everybody else, 70%, quite a third, never. Well, should be interesting for you. We've got 44%, nearly half, who've either just used it once or never, and it spreads across like that. Actually, what I think we're finding, I was reading about this the other day, the take-up in smaller organizations and organizations isn't massive at the moment, but it's very intense in some organizations. And I think the individual take-up is the experimentation where it's at. I predict that's going to change very soon because I think it's extremely useful. Okay, so here's a question for you. For those who are rarely or once a week or just, what are you using it for? Again, if you could let me know in the Q&A. Speed of light. Sorry, I'm seeing the answers before. Will Cronk, speed of light. I'm not sure if that is the speed of light. I don't know, but good guess. Supersonic. I reckon it was at least supersonic. It was a million miles an hour. So let's hear what you're using ChatGPT for. To put it in there. I'd just like to know, really. What are you using it for? Okay. Are you seeing anything, Eloise? Oh, hold on. Am I seeing things in?
Yeah, we've got
Oh, now you see I'm in the wrong box. Right, we go travel itinerary,
Q&A.
non-work, Teresa, drafting role specs to get started on knotty challenging. I think that's a lovely way of putting it. I of course, in my job, I have to put together, for example, agendas for leadership away days, for example. That's a staple of my work. Now, I've been doing that for 20 years. I still get ChatGPT to put together an agenda for me, because why wouldn't I? It's cost me almost nothing. It's cost me 5 seconds to do it. And sometimes it spots things that even I, as an expert in that area, miss. So absolutely. That's why I call it the heavy lifting. I write a lot of stuff. I'm hoping to write another book at some point. I get it to just give me a starter. Tell me about this. Give me some ideas on this. It's like having almost like my own intern, like someone just to do some stuff for me to get me going. Okay, great. So thank you. I really appreciate the interaction. So let's have a look at it ourselves. So let's go to ChatGPT, skip verification. Always slightly dodgy to do that. So I wanted to do a little demo, and this will be particularly interesting, I think, for the people who have not used it before. So here we go. So here's an example for you. This is one, as it were, on in blue peach terms I prepared earlier. So it's a very short prompt. You can have much longer prompts than this. Write me an email to a colleague who I had an argument with to arrange a meeting to clear the air. Use no more than 150 words. So it gives it's having a little bit of think about this. So I did try this one earlier. So that's not massively different, but hope this email finds you well. I want to reach out and suggest a meeting. Yeah, the recent argument. So, it's a pretty standard email, but how quick was that? Talk about heavy lifting done. Right. So I thought we could have a bit of fun here and maybe try and break it. Let's see if we can fox it. So I wanted to ask it a question. I've got a little way of doing this. So this is one I did earlier. And in that one, hopefully you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, there is a person. Please put a person in the chat for me, different from a vicar, some other kind of person. There is a topic. I put nuclear physics here. Give me another topic. And then there's a theme. I had injustice. So I'll give you what it puts that. So I want a person, a topic, and a theme. Please put that in the chat box, and we'll see if we can give it another go, another way to write an email. So I've got that here, and I'll put that at the bottom. So there you go. Dear Vicar, I hope this email finds you well. It talks about environmental iniquity, global disparities, nuclear arms race. It's kind of tried to bring those three things together. So this is my little pro forma at the bottom. I need a person from somebody. If someone could give me a person, somebody could give me a topic, and somebody could give me a theme. We'll have a go at, oh, right. Okay. So we've got someone's put, you've got, I assume that's the Prime Minister and climate change. So shall we put Rishi Sunak? Actually, let's put Prime Minister, because one of the issues with this, it might not know who the Prime Minister is now because of old data. Prime Minister, yeah. What's the topic? And we'll go for. Okay.
Have you seen Twitter changes and clown, Greg?
Okay, so some climate change. with a theme. Now let's put clowning. Let's see, that's going to break it, surely. Those are not related anyway. With an email to a prime minister with some facts about climate change, with a topic, with a theme of clowning. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, here we go. Dear Prime Minister, hope this email finds you well. Unusual approach to addressing the serious issue of climate change. I present you some key facts using a clowning theme to capture attention. The climate circus. Balancing act. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? The fading smile, unmasking the deniers, the grand finale. I don't know about you, but when it does stuff like that, that actually makes the head stand up slightly on the back of my neck. I mean, I know that's crazy, but how quick did it do that? That's quite clever. Those are actually realistic climate change issues, and it's used effectively the idea of clowning to bring it together. Interesting, don't you think? Just give me, if you've got a response to that, please put it in there. Maybe I'm exaggerating how great that is, but I think that's very, very interesting, personally. Okay, so there we go. I thought it'd be good to have a little bit of a demo of it. So that's what we're looking about. So this is the question, I think, and we already we established, didn't we, about 60 or 70% of us on this session, at least, have some kind of concern about this. How worried should we be about this thing? And I know that's a negatively framed question because I am an optimist. I'm not a technophobe, but I'm just starting with that because that's where a lot of the ideas are at the moment. So I've got 3 levels for this. I'm going to really, really cover the first 2 very quickly, but then focus on the third one for the rest of our little half-an-hour masterclass here. So the first one will be very familiar to you. It's been in the papers for at least 10 years. The idea of the rise of the super AI. So AI comes in sort of 3 levels. There's narrow AI, where you just stick it onto a little problem, which is kind of where we are now. I think ChatGPT is going to more of a generalized solution. Then you've got general intelligence AI. That's a little bit like just a fellow human being. We're not there yet, although you can see it's starting to seem like it's responding in a pretty intelligent way. And then you've got the idea of super AI. Now, recently, a clinical psychologist did an IQ test on ChatGPT-4, which I think we should take with a pinch of salt, by the way. But he came up with the idea that ChatGPT-4 has got an IQ of 155, which is more than 99% of the Americans that had ever taken the same test, than the whole population. So the idea of this is a runaway AI that does that learning thing it was doing with the Atari games and does it like every minute. So it goes from 155 to maybe 1,500 or 15,000 or whatever that would look like in terms of IQ. And just to give you a sense, Einstein never had his IQ tested, but people estimated it was around 160. So this is quote unquote intelligent in a very interesting way. So about this one, I don't know. It seems to split with technologists on both sides of the debate. Some people saying it's going to happen very soon and it's very dangerous. Others saying it's unlikely and it's not going to happen for a while. I don't think anyone's saying it will never happen. So my view is I don't know about this, but I think government should definitely be looking into it. This is, I think, more pressing for us. This is the idea of an era of deep faking that I don't think any of us are prepared for. Because obviously we were just seeing text, but AI and other derivatives can take your face and program it in. They can take your voice. And we're already seeing this. President Zelensky surrendered to the Russian troops recently in a video, although it wasn't President Zelensky. It was a deep fake from a Russian bot farm using AI. The whole of the Studio Actors Guild dispute in Hollywood at the moment is about this, deep faking actors and extras. This is really, really acidic and corrosive effects on our democracy. I think we already saw it in 2 election cycles in the US. The next one, it's definitely going to be a thing. It could change the course of an election. So this is very, very serious and very pressing in my view. But this is where my book really focuses and where I've focused as someone who's helping leaders in the here and now, AI and your job. And this is the most recent forecast. There have been forecasts going back a long way, but Goldman Sachs came out in April and said about 2/3 of jobs, mostly, by the way, in the Western world, because AI comes for white-collar jobs, not blue-collar jobs, unlike previous technologies, are exposed to some degree of AI automation. And about a quarter will be fully automated. But the reality, I suspect, for most people on this call, you've probably got quite skilled and complex jobs. What it will do is cheese slice away the simple and repetitive parts of your job, leaving a space for you to be successful or not successful alongside machines. That's where I became very interested in, which is the question I asked myself: how can I compete? How can the woman who asked me the question, how can she compete in a world of machines? Well, this is the way I saw it, that there is a growing value gap. And I think this is still very relevant. And I'd say this is widening, where you've got people who are, for want of a better expression, future fit. They're purpose driven. They can focus in a world of distraction. Slightly ironically, we're being distracted. To compete with AI, we need to occasionally disconnect from the AI-enabled social media apps to actually retain our ability to think like a human being. How weird is that? You need to be a curious question, a learner, a very, very everyday learner that gives you creative thought, allows you to collaborate, and therefore you add value in the workplace. On the other side is where we don't want to be, and we don't want our loved ones to be. Working in very, very simplistic jobs just for a paycheck, chronically distracted, thinking we're finished with school. You're not finished with school, however old you are, and I'm quite old. Inflexible. If you think you are that, you're an inflexible thinker. You do not need to collaborate because you're not having any new ideas anyway. And you're an added cost. An added cost will be ruthlessly extracted from most industries, in part by ChatGPT-4 and its derivatives in the coming 5 to 6 to 7 years. So where should you focus? Well, I think it looks a bit like this. We've got types of work, and then we've got human and machine intelligence. There's a growing world of what you might call standardized intelligence that analyzes and optimizes and repeats past behaviors, recommends us things. And then there's what I call the human edge, non-standardized intelligence that involves complex interactions between IQ and EQ, about caring, about empathizing, about being passionate, about creating things, about asking questions. That's where you need to ask yourself, how strong am I? How can I add to those? It was put up very well by a chap called Hans Moravec, who's a mathematician at Carnegie Mellon University over in the United States. He says there's a paradox, and it looks a bit like this. So if you imagine a mountain range with valleys in the bottom, like you can see on the screen, AI and machines have been filling up the valleys for quite some years, and they fill it up with things like calculation. I mean, I used a calculator at school. We haven't had human calculators since we sent men to the moon in 1968, where we actually did have human calculators. It's been better at playing chess and now Go. It's finding patterns in data, automating routine tasks, like just sending an email. That's now automatable. Don't do that. The top stuff on the top, you need to go to the peaks in this particular analogy, get out of those valleys, finding meaning, connecting the dots across different domains of knowledge, marshalling and understanding your feelings for yourself, for things, for other people, asking the right questions. These are meta skills. So meta skills from a psychological perspective are the skills that leverage up your other skills. So I've got 4 meta skills that I highlight in the book that I think still are very relevant when we're nearly 4 or 5 years later since I developed them. But the whole message of the book is this, and I still think it's an extremely relevant message, which is don't compete with machines where they're strong in those valleys. You're going to lose, because you are just not as cheap, you're not as fast, and you're not as good as they are at doing that. Differentiate with your human edge. Find that thing that's left in the marketplace. And I've got 3 or 4 ideas for you here. Obviously, we only wanted a half an hour masterclass. I wanted to leave some time at the end for discussion and questions. So I'm just going to cover them at a fairly high level, but I've got 3 or 4 ideas for you that I elaborate on a little bit more in the book. First of all, asking why you do things is incredibly important on multiple levels. If you're leading anyone or even managing yourself, your why is a thing that turns human beings on. I've long been talking about purpose and why and over the what and the how for about 20 years as a coach. And we've long known the psychological impact of it. We actually, thanks to neuroscience now, know that the brain gets rewired if we live a purposeful life. It releases a neurotransmitter called dopamine that makes you want to do things, that makes you want to try new things and keep going. It's a hugely motivating thing. And the other reason we should ask why is we are ethical beings, and we're going to need those ethics in the rather murky world of artificial intelligence stepping in and doing a lot of the stuff for us. Second, you desperately need to build your curiosity in this world. And it's just wider than AI. The world is changing so rapidly, being driven in large part by AI. So you need to learn faster than the world is changing around you. We'll just keep having to change and reinvent ourselves to keep up with this world. A great thing, what Eloise was asking me earlier, what surprised me about the book, what surprised me was how fascinated I became by the idea of curiosity. I could have written the whole book about it, quite frankly. To me, it's that foundational capability that we need to teach to ourselves and our children. The good news, it's not a fixed trait like having blue eyes or male pattern baldness, as I have. It is something you can develop in yourself consciously. Think of it more like the thermometer, that mercury in those old-fashioned thermometers. It goes up and down depending on who you're with. We catch it like a virus. We all know about viruses these days. And also depending on what you're learning and the information flow into you every day. Pablo Picasso once said, computers are rubbish. They only give you answers. And what he was saying there is human beings are great at the next question, at pushing the boundaries. And that's what curiosity can help you to do. As the computer scientist Alan Kay says, a change of perspective is worth 80 IQ points. I think that's so true. One other thing I'd say is while you're being curious, work out where you're getting your information from and try and learn across domain barriers, because that's where creativity comes from. When an idea jumps the fence from one place to another. I'll give you a silly example. There's many examples of creative thought coming from that collision, joining the dots, as I called it earlier, or connecting the dots. I don't know if you've ever wondered why we have all those fabulous fonts on our computer screens with the drop down. I'm not sure how useful they are, but it was certainly an innovation at the time. It came because Steve Jobs dropped out of college, but he went back to audit the courses that he was genuinely curious in. And one of them was a course on calligraphy, the art of handwriting. So he got very nerdy about fonts and handwriting. And of course, when he came together with Steve Wozniak and launched Apple, he wanted some amazing fonts as part of the first Apple word processor program. So that's why we have that. And if you can do that in your life, connecting the dots, you can come up with creative thought, which I think is one of the last bastions. I'm not saying AI isn't doing creative things now, it is, but we are very good at leading that, and we can help have AI help us with that idea. Empathy is something I touch on in the book as well, and I've thought and written extensively about since. This again is something you can build, and our ability to connect to other human beings and think, I think, will be one of the differentiators for us going forward, both in the leaders that I work with, but generally. Don't get me wrong, I think we're going to have caring robots and caring AI. We already do. But the reality is AI cares like a psychopath cares. It fakes it. It fakes it very well. As Groucho Marx once said, if you can fake authenticity, well, you've got it made. Well, AI fakes empathy. We can live with that, and I think it will help caring for lots of people. I think we haven't got enough carers, and it would be great to have an AI chatbot or robot to talk to. but I think there will be an increasing need for actual real empathy and caring, and that's what only human beings can provide. And finally, I would say, before hopefully have a chat more generally and home in on the areas you're interested in, I'd really urge you, if you're one of those people who've never tried ChatGPT-4, to do that, to have it on your computer or your iPhone or your iPad. Very easy. You can set it up in about 10 minutes and just experiment with it. It's very useful. I think the bottom line about the jobs idea is it's unlikely that AI is going to come and take your job. It will be another human being in partnership with AI that will possibly, as I say, I'm hoping everyone on this call, of fairly complex jobs, but that's what the dynamic will be. Using computers to make us more productive, to support our innate creativity, so we've got more time for kind of high touch rather than high tech activities, human activities. That's where it's all going. That's what the human edge is. It's summarized in the book in a model. As I say, I really like to try and make fairly complex things as practical and simple as possible. And in the book, there are 4 areas. These are the 4 superpowers. Consciousness is the idea of purpose, asking why, but also the idea of focus. Each of the 4 C's in the book has what I call a dance step. So there are 8 dance steps, 4 times 2. And I call them dance steps because although I write them in a linear way, actually you can put dance steps together in almost any order. And that's the reality of creative thought. It doesn't actually work in a linear way in reality. Curiosity is about your ability to ask better questions and also to learn faster than the world is changing. Creativity is all about creating a personalized creative habit for yourself of creative thinking. And collaboration, which, as I say, you need if you're having creative ideas, is putting together a network of fellow humans in order to collaborate with them, and now increasingly ChatGPT-4, but also experimenting at scale in your life. How can I experiment in order to pivot and get better, which is very connected with the idea of growth mindset. Okay, so those are my ideas. Thank you for listening to that. I just summarized saying, isn't it ironic that in a world of machines, we need to be more, not less human? That's the argument I make. You need to be more, not less human, as a leader, as a manager, as a friend, as a colleague, in order to add the value we need to do. So thank you very much. I'd love to hear any questions you've got. Eloise.
Wow, thanks, Greg. Fascinating, and you've covered such a lot of ground already. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, just send them in the Q&A box. I've been trying to keep hold of a few that came up earlier, and these 2 are sort of fairly similar, I say, but you'll tell me, Greg. So someone asked, OpenAI mentions that they do not use the interactions that we're putting in to fine-tune the model, but people have concerns anyway. Do you know any more about that?
I don't know a lot about that. I am very cautious about what I feed into any online program. They do say that they're not using that. What they say they're doing is they're training on a training set of data, and that's one of the weaknesses of OpenAI. Is the last training set, I think, finished about 2 years ago. So it's a little bit like a person who fell asleep 2 years ago, doesn't know modern stuff. But so, for example, like if I was writing a chapter of a book, I wouldn't pop that chapter in and say, just tell me about that chapter. I would be very cautious about anything that's protected by IP or I wanted to keep to myself. So I don't think they're using it, but I think we find things out later about technology companies, and sometimes they twist the truth a bit, is my experience. So I think it's a good cautionary precaution to have. Be careful what you put in online.
Yes, very wise. And this is slightly similar ground, but yes, who's fact checking the data? Are there biases? How do developers account for equitable, ethical, and responsible creation of the code and its use?
Yeah, well, there's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd say when I'm using ChatGPT-4, when we're saying let's partner with machines, Well, first of all, just on how effective it is, I think it still comes back with, as someone who likes to write and have my own human stamp on the writing, it's still coming back with something that feels quite generic most of the time. But there's a framework of interesting ideas there. Then there's ethics. I think anybody who's ripping off bits of text and then publishing it into a blog as themselves, when it was ChatGPT who's written it as from one prompt, that's not something I would advise or I would ever do. I think it's reasonably ethical to use ChatGPT-4 in your brainstorming process, and I think so many people are doing that. I think that to me is like using Google now. I think the questioners seem to talk about the answers coming back, the ethics of that. And I don't know if anyone's following this, the SAG dispute which I mentioned already in Hollywood, where they're striking over, and part of the strike that the actors and directors are having is the use of AI in writing scripts and other things. I think there's a big ethical question mark over people creating things and then having them out there in the open space of the internet, and programs like ChatGPT-4 coming, just hoovering it all up and spitting it out as its own. So for example, I could write something, and then I could say, rewrite that in the style of Malcolm Gladwell, because there's a lot of Malcolm Gladwell text out there, and it does it. It's a bit comical. I tried it the other day just for fun, but is that fair to Malcolm Gladwell? I think it's a bit odd. I think it gets even worse when it comes to faces and physical images and voices, and that's going to be that's I think a really, really dangerous and grey area. You can take ChatGPT-4 like AI and take your voice from some samples of your voice and then create new scripts for your voice to say. So what happens if one of our mums gets a call from us saying, I'm stuck and you've got to send me some money, I'm in danger, and it sounds like my voice? That's that it slides very quickly into criminality all the way through ethics. And so I think this is why we need the why, this is why we need the ethics. And I think we need our critical faculties around us more than we've ever done. When you're online, you should be constantly questioning, where's this come from? And what's the benefit of the person sending me this message?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of goes to answer another question about the lack of data integrity and the fake sources. So keep questioning what's coming back at you. Don't just trust it completely.
Yeah. And I'd say, there's obviously I've got 4 C's there. I'd say critical thinking, I didn't really cover massively in the book because I wanted to go more the human creative route. But with crikey, we need to be critically thinking about what we're accepting and our own views and our confirmation biases more than ever before. And Didier, no, this really is me. I'm not on the beach. I am actually here.
That was the running joke, wasn't it, on all the panel shows? Oh, well, this joke was written by AI. Yeah. So I was expecting you to. Another question about some of the information is not up to date. So we've also covered that because it's 2 years old. Here's an interesting one. Are there any advantages of opting for the premium version of ChatGPT?
My understanding, because I've thought about doing that, and I've got I think it's £20 ready. I would do it tomorrow if I couldn't get on, because there was a period, there was a massive pump after it came out in November as ChatGPT 3, and then upgraded to ChatGPT 4, and I think suddenly there was millions of people using their servers. This was before they got the investment from Microsoft, which I assume opened up huge, massive new servers for them, and you couldn't get on for a while. I've not experienced that. We did it live today. We had no problem getting on. So I don't think you get a better service. I think you just get a service. So personally speaking, £20 to have that all year round, and I'm not getting any commission for this, and I'm not affiliated with Microsoft. I think that's a bargain, and I would pay it if ever it becomes. And I suspect they've put so much money into this that I don't think they have to make a lot of money now. They use effectively, one of the interesting things that I didn't mention about the way they've trained ChatGPT-4, and I'm not a technologist, by the way, so hopefully I don't get any of this wrong, but in the Atari example I gave, there was no human interaction in that. That machine, AlphaGo, literally just taught itself how to play. With ChatGPT-4 and the responses, its text responses using the 300 billion words, it actually has got people saying, yes, that's good, or that's not a very good response. That's what it's getting from your responses. So every time I use it, if I upvote or like the response, it's saying, oh, well, that actually worked. So that's why it's improving. I don't think it's necessarily taking new data. It's just getting smarter with the 300 billion words it's already got.
Okay. Here's some praise for you, Greg. Reading the book and love the experiments. So that's fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. It makes my day when you've got something out there. Thanks to people like Eloise and Pearson, and it's out there in the world. It really is wonderful. I get people all the time on LinkedIn saying how they've enjoyed it. And, you know, I think there's something like 40 to 50 small experiments in there. It only takes one of them. If that can just change your life by 1 or 2%, that's great, isn't it? That's the way I think of myself improving. I certainly don't take great leap forward. It's those small experiments. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Have you tried it in jailbreak mode? This is a developer hat on.
I haven't, and I don't even know what jailbreak mode is.
Could they? That's some kind of developer mode.
Yeah. As I say, I'm not a technologist, so that's probably someone who knows more about it than I do. Maybe they could put that in the I'll look it up after this.
Yeah. And also something else about the book. They found the book part referring to being more childlike really helpful. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Well, I tried to describe what it feels like to be creative, which, if you imagine trying to describe that, is a bit like nailing smoke to a wall. It's a difficult thing to understand. But I think one of the ways that I understood it, and one of the great things about writing the book for me, is I think it helped me to rediscover my own creativity, because I didn't feel particularly creative when I came out of school. We're told we're not creative. All the research shows most people go into school aged 4 or 5 with great creative skills and come out them with a good brain, but their creativity has been almost wiped out. So how do you reclaim it is the big question of the book. And one of the ways is not childish, to be childlike, which is to be enthusiastic about new ideas, to pursue all sorts of different new ideas, which is my jumping the fence analogy I was making. But also, I think it goes into the idea, I think we grow up to feel that if things don't work for us, it's a failure. And failure is not welcomed in organizations or in our lives, and we feel like we've failed. But that is actually the reality of being creative. If you are not producing things that don't quite work or don't work in the way you thought they would, I don't think you're actually pushing yourself. And a great analogy that's a sort of childlike analogy is when we all learn to walk when we're 2.5 years old. We don't expect to just get up and do it. And every time we fall over, we don't say, well, I've fallen over, I can't do that, so I can't walk. I'm going to need a chair from now on. We just fall over and try again, and fall over and try again. And we lose that. We lose that ability to experiment and to forgive ourselves for it. So that is something I encourage in the book. And it's certainly improved me as a writer, as a thinker, is it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on AI art tools, such as Adobe Photoshop's generative fill tool, and the possible impact on art and design subjects?
I think that's worrying. I think it's as I say, great light, great shadow. It's phenomenal. I was reading about a guy, I can't remember his name, who produces kind of fantasy art for movies and games, and he's been making a very good living. But he went online to search for who was being searched in the area, and his name was being searched more than Pablo Picasso, because people were using his name and telling ChatGPT 4 like tools that produce images, not words, and saying, make it like this guy. So is that fair to him? Just because he's got so much art out there? I don't think it is. And this is very personal for me because my youngest son is just about to start a fine art degree. So I think it's worse for graphical and visual artists than it is even for writers, because it cheapens their work. And I think we're still working that one out. And I do think there'll have to be some kind of intellectual property settlement with artists and visual artists quite soon. But will there be? Will the American government do that? Because they are the ones who'll have to do it. I haven't got a lot of hope for that. But I think that's pretty scary if you're a visual artist.
Yeah.
Greg Rysatsky, thank you for that, Jacqueline. Yeah, thank you.
Here's another one. What about people who are sort of content in doing repetitive work, or they're not considered sort of creative or complex? Are we leaving those people behind?
Well, that's a whole area of politics that I sort of kind of skipped around in this short presentation. I talked about jobs and really the sort of people that will probably be dialing into a Pearson Book Club kind of session. Yes, I think there will be large economic or is always political. There'll be political upheavals because there will be people who lose their job in its entirety. So it's going to affect anyone in administration of any kind. It's going to affect anyone who's a personal assistant. Let's face it, autonomous driving is effectively an artificial intelligence play just in the physical world. Long distance lorry drivers and taxi drivers and train drivers. These are jobs that will be automated almost in total. And that's going to happen quite soon because I think the only response, and I think it's never been a particularly popular response when technological change has brought huge disruption, is those people will probably have to retrain. And that has been the story that has gone back into the 1980s. That goes all the way back to elevator operators in the 1920s. And I feel for those people, but there will be people that this will disrupt very personally. It won't be a theoretical exercise, and they will need to retrain, I think.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time, so just one more question, but I think this is a good one to end on. How do we begin implementing AI or partnering with AI? What would be the first step you'd suggest?
So we're kind of a team or an organizational level here, aren't we? I think I would just look at let's just take a team because it's a little bit more manageable. I would just look at the team. And this is like, you can do this. This is one of the first experiments in the book for individuals. You can do it at a team level too. And think, if I broke my job or this team's job down into all the different sub activities that it does, and you go from one big strand, maybe you're an HR team, for example, because I work with a lot of HR teams. And then you have all the sub strands of what an HR team does. You probably get to 100 strands quite quickly. Which are the strands that are extremely repetitive and routine? That is your in. Because even having sort of lauded and discussed the creative abilities of AI, which are improving, that's where it in terms of practical application, routine, repetitious things, that's where it's brilliant at doing. So to take my HR example, a lot of HR teams I work with are sending a lot of internal communication. Clearly, you could use ChatGPT-4 to do that and start writing APIs on top of the ChatGPT-4 to automate that. And most of the HR teams I work with are overworked, and so they can then start to shift towards more, calling people and speaking to people and training people and getting with people in that way. So I would start with that. What is automatable? Because it is repetitive, because you can actually record all the keystrokes, you can record the process. So that's where it starts, I believe.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Greg. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to share a screen just to show how people can stay in touch with you. Yeah, if they want to follow you on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Yeah, I'd really welcome that. I always like keeping in touch with people.
Great. And I think we also will have a poll asking for feedback on the session. We hope you found it really useful. I know I found it really fascinating.
Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you, Eloise, and thanks for some really great questions. Really appreciate it.
Oh, good, good. Oh, I've just been told that the survey will be afterwards, so I'll just continue for now. Okay, so if you enjoyed our session, I hope you'll be in touch back for the next one in August. It will be Thursday, the 24th of August at 2 p.m. UK time, and our book of the month will be Winning Together, which is by Patricia Hind, Fiona Dent and Vicky Holton. And the masterclass will be on why good working relationships are essential and how to build them. So continuing the being human theme. So thank you, everyone. I hope it was useful and hope to see you again next time.